At this very moment, in the remote waters of the Indian Ocean, the vessel Armada 7806, equipped with the world's most advanced shipwreck hunting technology, is on a mission to find the most mysteriously missing aircraft in history, MH370. This is the most expensive and highly anticipated search in over a decade. But just as the first sonar signals of strange debris on the ocean floor were detected, the ship abruptly withdrew from the scene. Independent experts believe the search team gathered compelling sonar images of the aircraft wreckage and needed to leave to protect this highly sensitive evidence before its announcement. The truth about the fate of MH370 may finally be stored on Ocean Infinity's hard drives. So what truly appeared on their sonar screens? And why keep it secret instead of staying to verify it, an action any search team would take? Let's trace back the events to uncover the shocking secret behind this highly suspicious withdrawal. In March 2025, the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 returned to the spotlight as a new mission began in the southern Indian Ocean. At the center of this effort was Armada 7806, a 78-meter vessel designed to carry the latest in deep-sea robotics. On board were the Hugin 6,000 autonomous underwater vehicles, machines built to dive as far as 6,000 meters below the surface and scan huge stretches of seabed with remarkable precision. Their task was massive: cover an area of about 15,000 square kilometers, a region as large as an entire small country. This time, the operation did not rely on guesswork alone. The search grid was mapped out using years of research, from satellite handshakes that tracked the plane's last moments to ocean drift models that explained how debris reached the coasts of Africa. Independent investigators also added their theories, including flight path reconstructions and computer simulations, narrowing the focus to zones that had never been fully examined. With so many layers of data combined, Armada 7806 entered the ocean with confidence that it was searching in the right place. What set this mission apart was the technology guiding it. Earlier searches used heavy-towed sonar systems that struggled with steep underwater slopes, but now AI-driven sonar and synthetic aperture radar allowed the Hugin vehicles to adapt to complex terrain. These machines could roam independently for days, transmitting detailed maps of the seabed back to operators in real time. Every dive promised to reveal shapes that past searches had missed, raising hopes that the mystery could finally be solved. But as Armada 7806 began to scan the depths, rumors started to spread that something unusual was already taking form on the sonar screens. Could this be the first real sign of MH370, or just another false lead waiting to crush expectations? Not long after Armada 7806 began its mission, whispers spread through online forums and aviation circles about a strange discovery on the ocean floor. Anonymous sources claimed that the ship's advanced sonar, powered by artificial intelligence, had detected a formation that looked very different from natural rock. Instead of smooth ridges or scattered boulders, the images showed patterns that resembled twisted panels and broken outlines, the kind of shapes that should not appear in nature. To many observers, it sounded like the first real evidence of a debris field from Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. The idea of a debris field carries weight because wreckage underwater often forms in clusters. When a large aircraft breaks apart on impact, the heavier pieces sink quickly while lighter fragments scatter, but the main body usually ends up in a concentrated area. If the sonar images were accurate, Armada 7806 may have stumbled upon something that earlier searches missed. This would not be surprising, since much of the terrain near the Seventh Arc is filled with steep slopes, canyons, and ridges that make sonar mapping difficult. Even advanced systems from past missions often produced gaps, leaving blind spots that could have hidden large objects. Reports about the possible find quickly gained attention because the zone being scanned had long been considered suspicious. Independent analysts like Victor Ianello pointed out that earlier searches avoided sections of the seabed where slopes were too steep for traditional sonar. These gaps became known as data holidays, places where poor imaging made it impossible to confirm what lay beneath. When Ocean Infinity returned in 2025 with autonomous vehicles designed to follow terrain more closely, experts believed the odds of finding something in those missed areas had finally increased. Adding to the intrigue, the alleged debris field matched predictions from other studies. Oceanographer Charitha Patiarachi from the University of Western Australia had used drift models to show where floating wreckage from MH370 should have appeared along African shores. His results suggested a crash site between 28.5 and 33 degrees south, which overlaps with the region Armada 7806 was scanning. At the same time, Blaine Gibson, the independent investigator who personally recovered more than 20 pieces of debris on beaches, had long argued that the crash site was further south than previous searches assumed. If both men were correct, then the sonar detection could finally confirm years of suspicion. The possibility of a breakthrough created a wave of excitement, but also deep caution. Sonar has a history of producing false images, especially when scanning rugged seabeds. Rock formations, shadows, and sediment layers can easily mimic man-made structures. In 2018, Ocean Infinity encountered several targets that initially appeared promising but turned out to be natural features. That is why raw sonar data must be processed, cross-checked, and even followed up with direct imaging before any claims can be made. The Huygens 6000 vehicles on Armada 7806 were equipped with cameras and lights for such verification, but deploying them takes time and planning. Until those steps were completed, no one could say with certainty whether the shapes were wreckage or simply tricks of the deep. What made the rumors even more compelling was the timing. News of the sonar hit the public just as the ship was finishing its first sweep of the seabed. Within days, Armada 7806 changed course, raising questions about whether the crew had already gathered enough data to justify a pause. To some, this looked like a deliberate decision to leave quickly with valuable information, rather than staying longer to continue scanning. If true, it would mean that the most important discovery in aviation history was already sitting inside Ocean Infinity's servers, waiting for experts to analyze, hope that the truth was finally within reach, and fear that another disappointment could follow. In the search for MH370, every potential clue carried the weight of millions of unanswered questions. But if a debris field was really detected, why did Armada 7806 suddenly leave the area instead of staying to confirm it? When Armada 7806 altered its course and began sailing back toward Singapore, the decision shocked those who had been following the search. The vessel had only recently started its operations in the southern Indian Ocean, and many expected months of scanning before any pause. Instead, the sudden withdrawal raised more questions than answers, especially since rumors of a debris field had just surfaced. For the families of MH370 victims and the global audience watching closely, the timing felt too unusual to ignore. Official explanations were offered, but they failed to quiet the doubts. Ocean Infinity stated that poor weather conditions made it unsafe to continue and that their plan had always included seasonal pauses. The Indian Ocean is notorious for violent storms and shifting currents, and even advanced autonomous vehicles are not immune to damage. Still, skeptics noted that ships of this kind are built to withstand harsh environments, and previous search efforts had lasted much longer under similar conditions. The idea that weather alone forced a retreat seemed incomplete. Adding to the mystery was the fact that the retreat came shortly after Malaysia's government finalized the $70 million no-find, no-fee contract. Such agreements are rare in aviation history, and they put enormous pressure on Ocean Infinity to deliver results. To pull out so soon, just weeks after the deal was signed, struck many observers as inconsistent with the stakes. Some suggested that the company had already gathered data worth analyzing and preferred to pause rather than risk losing valuable information. Analysts pointed to the logistical patterns of the Armada fleet as further evidence that the move was deliberate. Ships like Armada 7806 often dock in Singapore for maintenance, data transfer, and crew rotation. Returning early could allow Ocean Infinity to process terabytes of sonar readings in specialized facilities. High-resolution sonar does not simply reveal wreckage at a glance. It produces complex images that need weeks of study to separate genuine wreckage from geological formations. By leaving the area, the company may have been signaling that it already possessed enough material for a detailed review. Critics also highlighted the silence surrounding the withdrawal. In previous missions, Ocean Infinity often shared updates about areas covered, distances scanned, or technical milestones. This time, the flow of information slowed, leaving only vague statements about strategy and safety. Earlier searches by other agencies had ended with similar explanations, leading to frustration and accusations of secrecy. The sudden return of Armada 7806 seemed to follow that same pattern, fueling speculation that something important was being kept under wraps. Another factor adding weight to the suspicions was precedent. In 2018, Ocean Infinity had located the lost Argentine submarine ARA San Juan after months of uncertainty. That mission also involved stretches where data was pulled back for review before confirmation was made public. Supporters of the current search argued that the company was simply following the same cautious approach, but critics countered that the MH370 case carried a higher level of global interest. Any unexplained pause could only increase mistrust. For those studying the movements of Armada 7806 through satellite tracking, the course towards Singapore appeared calculated rather than desperate. The ship did not drift aimlessly, nor did it display the erratic patterns of a vessel struggling against storms. Instead, it followed a steady route, as if the decision had been made in advance. Observers argued that this consistency suggested strategy rather than emergency. If the goal was merely to avoid bad weather, why not remain closer to the target zone until conditions improved? The withdrawal, then, became part of the mystery itself. To some, it proved that Ocean Infinity had indeed seen something worth analyzing, while to others it was another frustrating example of lost momentum. But if the retreat was not about weather, what deeper reason could explain Ocean Infinity's choice to step away from the search zone so suddenly? When Ocean Infinity paused its mission, many experts and observers believed the retreat was more than a response to weather. The strongest suspicion was that the company had already collected promising sonar images and now needed time to study them carefully. Processing sonar data is not as simple as looking at a photograph. Each dive generates terabytes of raw information, and specialized software must translate those signals into clear images. This takes weeks of work, and rushing the analysis could lead to mistakes that damage the credibility of the entire mission. The Hugin 6000 vehicles, designed to operate for nearly 100 hours per dive, carry high-resolution sonar and cameras. They can capture details that older search systems would have missed, but the trade-off is that the information is far more complex. Every ridge, trench, or rock casts shadows that can mimic wreckage. Before declaring any discovery, teams must compare images from different angles, filter noise, and often run simulations to test whether the patterns are natural or artificial. In this context, pulling back to process data in a controlled environment makes sense, even if it appears suspicious to the outside world. Supporters of this theory pointed to Ocean Infinity's history with the Argentine submarine ARA San Juan. In that case, the company collected images, paused to verify them, and only later announced the successful find. The cautious strategy avoided false alarms and allowed the final confirmation to be undeniable. Critics, however, argue that the MH370 case is different. The disappearance of a passenger jet with 239 people is not only a technical problem, but also a global tragedy. Silence feels heavier here, and every unexplained pause is seen as another delay in bringing answers to families who have waited more than a decade. The decision also raised questions about timing. The withdrawal came just as rumors of a debris field were gaining traction, making it difficult to separate fact from speculation. If Ocean Infinity had truly captured evidence of wreckage, then leaving the site could mean that critical confirmation was postponed. Some independent analysts suggested that the company might even be protecting sensitive information until it could be reviewed with the Malaysian government. After all, the $70 million contract requires cooperation, and premature announcements could complicate negotiations. These behind-the-scenes suspicions grew louder because of the lack of transparency. Instead, the sudden silence fueled doubts about hidden motives. Was the data too sensitive, or was Ocean Infinity afraid of raising false hopes again? At the same time, the mystery of the withdrawal highlighted the balance between science and responsibility. Companies leading searches must protect the integrity of their data, but they also face a moral duty to communicate honestly with those who have suffered. In the case of MH370, this tension has never been greater. The possibility of a breakthrough is on the table, yet the world is once again left waiting for proof. If the pause was really about analyzing secret sonar images, what role would independent investigators play in confirming or challenging Ocean Infinity's conclusions? When Ocean Infinity stepped back from the search zone, independent investigators quickly filled the silence. Among them was Blaine Gibson, a lawyer-turned-adventurer who has spent years walking remote beaches from Madagascar to Mozambique. He personally recovered more than 20 fragments linked to MH370, including pieces of wing and cabin panels. Gibson argued that these discoveries pointed to a crash site further south than earlier searches suggested. In his view, the current search zone was vital because it overlapped with areas he had long believed to be the true resting place of the aircraft. His persistence gave weight to the idea that something important might already have been found. Another voice was Richard Godfrey, an engineer who developed a controversial but detailed theory using weak signal propagation reports, or WSPR. This method analyzed how radio signals bounced around the globe on the night of the disappearance, creating what he described as an invisible radar. Godfrey's reconstruction suggested that MH370 took a looping path before heading deep into the southern Indian Ocean. His coordinates aligned with the very region Armada 7806 had just left behind. For supporters of his theory, the sudden withdrawal felt like confirmation rather than coincidence. Oceanographer Charitha Pattiarachi from the University of Western Australia added further weight with drift analysis. By tracing how debris floated across the ocean over months and years, he calculated that the aircraft most likely went down between 28.5 and 33 degrees south. That prediction matched the areas Gibson and Godfrey had highlighted, forming a rare agreement between independent methods. To Pattiarachi, the science was clear. The answers lay in the same sector that Ocean Infinity was now pausing to review. These experts were not only offering technical insights, but also applying pressure. When Gibson spoke about standing on beaches and holding pieces of the aircraft in his hands, it reminded people that MH370 was not just a mystery, but a human tragedy. When Godfrey explained his data models, it gave families a sense that the case had not gone cold. And when Pattiarachi described the ocean currents, it offered a sense of logic in a story filled with uncertainty. Together, their voices kept the search alive in the public eye. Yet their interventions also deepened the sense of urgency. If three respected figures were pointing to the same area, then why had Armada 7806 left without confirming what was there? Some suspected that the company wanted to control the narrative, ensuring that any announcement would come with undeniable proof. Others wondered if political or financial interests were shaping the silence. Whatever the reason, the experts' agreement only intensified suspicion that the mission was withholding something important. The more these voices spoke, the more the pressure grew on Ocean Infinity and the Malaysian government. Silence could no longer pass as strategy because outside experts were building a story that captured global attention. In a case where trust has been broken so many times, independent figures became the guardians of hope. But while their theories aligned, the world still wanted hard evidence. Could technology in 2025 finally deliver what years of searching had failed to provide? The search for MH370 has never been only about science. It has also been a story of cost, politics, and human grief. Between 2014 and 2018, governments from Malaysia, Australia, and China spent more than $150 million combing through the southern Indian Ocean. It was the most expensive operation in aviation history, yet the result was silence. After years of scanning 120,000 square kilometers of seabed, officials called off the search, leaving families devastated and the public frustrated. Some parents grew old without knowing where their children lay, while children grew up never learning what truly happened to their parents. This ongoing pain created constant pressure on politicians who were accused of abandoning the search too soon. The decision to bring Ocean Infinity back in 2025 was not just about technology, it was also about repairing trust. The political dimension cannot be ignored. Malaysia faced heavy criticism for its handling of the crisis, from confusion during the first hours of the disappearance to delays in releasing cargo details. Each misstep deepened suspicion, and each failed search reduced confidence. Agreeing to the no-find, no-fee deal was therefore more than a contract. It was a signal to the world that the government was willing to take one last bold step, even if it meant risking embarrassment. Public opinion added even more weight. Social media campaigns spread across continents, demanding justice and transparency. Aviation groups reminded leaders that without finding the wreck, no one could fully explain what happened, leaving air travel safety with a dangerous gap. To the world, this was not simply a Malaysian tragedy, but a global event that showed how fragile modern systems could be. With history repeating itself in cycles of hope and disappointment, the stakes in 2025 became higher than ever. People no longer wanted promises, they wanted evidence, which made one question impossible to avoid. Would new technology finally meet the expectations that history and society had placed on this mission? The 2025 search for MH370 is not just another mission. It is powered by a new generation of machines built to see the unseen. At the center of this effort is Ocean Infinity's Armada 7806, a sleek 78-meter support vessel launched in 2023. Unlike the older ships used in previous operations, this one is designed to work almost like a floating control room, deploying fleets of autonomous underwater vehicles without needing large crews. These drones can map ridges, slopes, and deep valleys that once confused earlier searches, creating a picture of the seabed that is clearer than anything attempted before. In addition, the new software running the drones is guided by artificial intelligence, which filters out noise, highlights unusual patterns, and reduces the risk of missing wreckage. What makes the search stand out is the strategy of covering areas that were once ignored. By filling in the gaps, they hope to eliminate the possibility that the wreck has been hiding in terrain too rough for old sonar. If they succeed, the search could shrink from thousands of square kilometers to a handful of hotspots, saving both time and resources. Another advantage is speed. The Armada 7806 can deploy 3 Hugin drones at once, working in parallel instead of one at a time. This means weeks of work can now be done in days, reducing the long delays that drained earlier missions. At the same time, live data is transmitted back to control centers in England, where operators can analyze results almost instantly. This removes the frustrating lag that once forced search teams to wait until ships returned to port before reviewing critical scans. The combination of technology and timing also matters. The southern Indian Ocean is notorious for rough waves and storm systems, but by starting the main phases during the calmest months, Ocean Infinity is stacking the odds in their favor. Better weather increases the drone's stability and extends their operating windows, giving the team more chances to spot wreckage before winter returns. The idea that the ocean floor can now be scanned with near-surgical precision gives many the belief that if MH370 is there, this search will finally reveal it. But of course, hope always carries risk. What happens if the machines come back empty once again? The search for MH370 now enters its most critical phase: the agonizing wait for analysis. While the retreat suggests compelling data was captured, history cautions us. The ocean floor is a master of deception, where geology often mimics wreckage. This deliberate pause is a shield against false hope, ensuring that if a discovery is announced, it is irrefutable. The world watches, hoping that this time, silence truly precedes closure. The ultimate truth no longer lies in the deep ocean, but within the terabytes of data being deciphered, a digital tomb that may finally grant 239 souls their long-awaited peace.